Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I'm your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. Like always, we hope you've been well since the last episode. Today is a viewer requested episode, and we're going to dive deep into two pretty sick individuals. And this is everybody's fair warning right away. It might get pretty graphic today, and some things might not be comfortable for some people. So if things like rape, torture, murder, sadism, things like that that you're sensitive to, this might not be the episode for you, but it's going to be very entertaining. You're going to learn a lot about the mind of psychopaths and how they operate and just how sneaky they can be getting away with their crimes. And we have two pretty well-developed names. One of them's less known than the one that is known that we're going to be talking about today, but both of them are great opposite ends of the spectrum to be talking about for this episode. And you guys are going to, I guess at the end of the episode, after we talk about each person, you're going to realize their similarities, but you're also going to realize how different they were in their operations, about how they controlled people and how they used people and things of that nature. And what I find interesting about the first person that we're going to talk about is that he's better known for the crimes that he got away with. Let's just put it this way. He has up to possibly 60 victims, but he's never been tried for one murder. Charles Manson, on the other hand, he had this huge following and was totally just had many irons in the fire, and he was controlling a lot of people.
Mhm.
So you got one that's more in the shadows and one that's in the spotlight, and they're both operating this deal. And we're talking about David Parker Ray and Charles Manson today. And they are both unique when it comes to their evil crimes that they committed upon this world and the atrocities that they committed upon this world. But yeah, what do you think, Chris? I think we got a pretty good episode lined up
Oh
today.
yeah, and it's this was viewer requested that we go into like true crime stuff, kind of like the Dateline of YouTube at the moment,
Hmm.
where we're investigating some of these creepier crime incidences, and also there's like kind of a blending of two worlds here, where you have like the tendencies of the murderer and what they and the crimes they commit, and also why and how these things happen.
Hmm.
So some people have requested that we go into the nitty gritty on some of these true crime type things, not just
Hmm.
always the paranormal stuff, but also the aspects as to the who, what, where, when, why, and how kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm. And we will pick up and elaborate off of what we read normally, throughout the articles and the storylines and things of that nature. But if you want, I'll go ahead and I'll screen share here, and we'll just get started right away. Uh, so I want everybody to close their eyes and pretend as if they were abducted viciously, drugged up to where they didn't know what was going on. And either hours later, a day later, you wake up inside of a trailer that's turned into this man's, David Parker Ray, is what he called toy box. It's filled with extreme sadistic toys, sex toys that he used to torture, rape, possibly murder his victims. And he could have been doing this for years. He developed a tape in 1992, I believe was the year that he recorded this tape. And they would wake up drowsy on a gynecological table. Women would, with their legs spread open. They'd be tied up, gagged, drugged up, and used for days on end, weeks on end. And supposedly he'd drug them up, dump them out in the middle of nowhere, and some of them would live, some of them he'd kill. It just don't know. He's very mystical, and he hid in the shadows. That's the thing. A lot of them want the spotlight. This guy had a very interesting life, and he's one of the most interesting people I've ever come across in the true crime world. I don't mean that to give him fame and fortune by any means, but he's very interesting the way that he got away with his crimes. And I'm going to play his tape that he recorded for his victims. Their victims would wake up after they were abducted, kidnapped, and this is what they'd be listening to. Put yourself in their shoes and see if you wouldn't be freaked out. And I warn you, this video is graphic. It is a re-recording of somebody, that muffled it over, so it's not his actual voice. That's impossible to find. I haven't been able to find that anywhere. But yeah, give it a listen.
The following is for educational purposes only. This is a re-recording of the audio tape that the Toy Box Killers, David Parker Ray and Cindy Hindi, would play for their victims. It contains vile language and mature topics, including detailed talks of sexual assault and bestiality. We do not recommend listening to this if you're under the age of 18, a victim of assault, or easily triggered or offended.
Hello there, bitch. It's comfortable right now. I do it. Wrist tonight is changed. Michael. Nothing or circumstances. For a little while at least, get your shit together and listen to this tape. It is very relevant to your situation. I'm going to tell you in detail why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here. I don't know the details of your capture, because this tape is being created July 23rd, 1983, as a general advisory tape for all future female captives. The information I'm going to give you is based on my experience dealing with captives over a period of several years. If at a future date there are any major changes in our procedures, the tape will be upgraded. Now you are obviously here against your will, totally helpless, you don't know where you're at, don't know what's going to happen to you. You're very scared or very pissed off. I'm sure you already tried to get your wrists and ankles loose, and no, you can't. Now you're just waiting to see what's going to happen next. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're fucking sure right about that. Our primary interest is what you've got between your legs. You'll be raped thoroughly, and repeatedly, and every hole you've got, because basically, it's snatched and brought here for us to train and use you as a sex slave. Sounds kind of far out. Well, I suppose it is to be uninitiated. Well, you're all time. It's gonna take a lot of adjustment on your part, and you're not gonna like it one fucking bit. But I don't give a rat's ass about that. It's not like you're gonna have any choice in the matter. You've been taken by force, and you're going to be kept and used by force. What all this amounts to is that you're going to be kept naked and chained up like an animal to be used and abused at any time we want to, in any way that we want to.
How about that? Isn't that chilling? And it goes on for another 40 minutes. It was a 45-minute audio tape that he made these people listen to, and he dives into bestiality, live sex parties, taping it. It was very interesting. And the weird thing about this guy, and we're going to get into detail, and I'm going to go right into that. I'll share it back over to.
And we can always put the link to
I
that
don't
in
need
the
to share.
description underneath, if you guys want to go listen to it as well. Yeah.
I won't share the next screen. I'll just talk about it. There's really not a lot of information about this guy, but I'm just going to use Wikipedia for once. I never use Wikipedia, but it's a pretty good overall aspect of his life, and I'll dive on into it. So the strange thing about him, before I read this, I just want to tell everybody what separates him is he had female accomplice. He had a girlfriend. He was also married 4 times, I believe, but he had a female accomplice, 2 female accomplices. One of them his daughter, the other one a girlfriend, and there was also a guy that had joined them and supposedly was helping out in these abductions and kidnappings, rapes, and murders and tortures. So David Parker Ray, also known as the Toy Box Killer, was an American kidnapper, torturer, and rapist. Suspected serial killer. Ray kidnapped, raped, and tortured an unknown number of women over many decades at his home in Elephant Butte, New Mexico, occasionally assisted by accomplices, including his daughter Glenda Jean Ray and partner Cindy Hindi. Ray was suspected by authorities and accused by accomplices of murdering up to 60 of his victims. However, no bodies or definitive evidence have ever been uncovered linking him to any murders. Here's the thing. Ray was also a pillar of the community. He was the guy that everybody went to for everything. His coworkers thought he was the best guy on earth. Apparently, he was very intelligent. He was a craftsman mechanic and could fix anything. He was the state employee of the year, and all at the same time, he's doing all of this. I mean, it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, usually they're usually pillars of the community. They're usually people that are very popular. They want to be around people. They're very narcissistic people. And then they have this. It goes with the old phrase: the brighter the picture, the darker the negative. So,
I mean, kind of a double life sort of thing.
mhm.
Ray used soundproofing methods in his semi-trailer, which he called his toy box, which he also spent $100,000 on to rig everything that he wanted. And he equipped it with items used for sexual torture. He would kidnap about 4 or 5 women a year, holding each of them captive for around 2 to 3 months. During this period, he would sexually abuse his victims and often torture them with surgical instruments, sometimes inviting his friend's wife or even his male dog to rape the victim. After keeping them in captivity for a couple of months, Ray would then drug the victim with barbiturates in an attempt to erase their memories before abandoning them by the side of a road. Ray was arrested in March 1999 after one of his victims escaped and was convicted of kidnapping and torture in 2001. He received a lengthy sentence but was never tried for murder due to lack of evidence. He died of a heart attack less than a year after he went to prison, shortly before a planned police interrogation. So he took all of his secrets to the grave with him. And here's the crazy thing, is that Cindy Hendy, his accomplice, is out of jail. His daughter never went to jail because he took the pitfall for, if she gets, nothing is charged towards her, I'll say that, kind of a plea deal sort of a thing. And so the other accomplice, Cindy Hendy's out. And then I think the other guy, Ray, whatever his name was, I forget that, or Roy, there was a guy named Roy that was helping him. He's out of prison now. So there's 2 people that know some secrets, and they're both out. His biography, so his early life and everything. Parker Ray was born on November 6, 39 in Belen, New Mexico, to father Cecil or Cecil, depending on the pronunciation, Leland Ray, mechanic and native of Oregon, and mother Nettie Opal Parker, who had been born in Texas. During his childhood, Ray and his younger sister, Peggy Pearl, lived with his mother's disciplinarian parents, Russell and Dolly Parker, on a small ranch due to their poor financial condition. He was sporadically visited by his violent alcoholic father, who would supply him with magazines depicting sadomasochistic pornography. At Mountaineer High School in Mountaineer, New Mexico, he was bullied by his peers for his shyness around girls, which resulted in abusing alcohol and other drugs. So, a lot of serial killers, similar upbringing. He was bullied, he was abused, he was a loner, sort of. Ray's sexual fantasies of raping, torturing, and even murdering women developed during his teenage years. When Ray was 14 years old, his sister saw his sadomasochistic drawings and pornographic pictures of bondage practices. As a result, Ray and his sister became estranged. Based on statements made by Ray, he is believed to have begun assaulting women as an adolescent. And he supposedly said to one of his first wives that he killed his first victims when he was 16 or 17.
Mm.
So he'd been doing this since then. Based on statements that he made, Ray is believed to have begun assaulting women as an adolescent. In an advisory message that was tape recorded on Ray by July 23rd, 1993, he claimed, "I've been raping bitches ever since I was old enough to jerk off and tie little girls' hands behind their back." He even alleged to his first wife that he had committed his first homicide sometime in 1957 when he kidnapped a woman, tied her to a tree, and tortured and murdered her. However, authorities were unable to verify his account. After completing high school, Ray received an honorable discharge from the United States Army, where his service included work as a general mechanic. Ray then worked as a maintenance man for the New Mexico Parks Department in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, for the entirety of his adulthood until his arrest. The resort town, located approximately 5 miles from Elephant Butte, New Mexico, contains several local bars, which Ray frequented for victims. And I've been to Truth or Consequences. The interesting thing about that, it was named after a game show in the 1950s of a game show with the same name. They were doing a promotion, and also Bob Barker, the longtime host of
Price is
uh,
right. Price is right. Yeah.
Price is Right, and I was confused with Wheel of Fortune. I love Price is Right. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. Never remember the name of it for some reason. But they did a promotion to where they renamed the town to Truth or Consequences. And it used to be Little Hot Springs. We've been in the hot springs there. It's a lovely place. And I can tell you, after driving around there, he could drive 2 miles off of the highway and the body may never be found. He also had a boat, and he knew every inch of Elephant Butte Lake, which I believe is 43 miles in length and 200 feet deep. So he could have sunk bodies. There is apparently a form of fish, catfish or something, form of fish in that lake that can, like, pretty much like a piranha, eat human.
Hmm.
And
Very easy. I've heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, and he just and working for the state, he knew all the hidden areas too. He had access to areas that the general public doesn't have access to. All at the same time putting on this fake facade where he's a pillar of the community. So it's just insane.
I've been
Uh,
in that area myself, and yeah, you could easily hide a body out there very, very easily. That's also a very paranormally enriched area as well, with a lot
yeah,
of communities out that way.
that,
So,
that hey, remember the state's name, and it's true. I love New Mexico. It's one of my favorite states, minus the crime, but
well,
it is
yeah.
one of my favorite states, the land of enchantment, and it is
Oh,
too.
it
I'll
is.
never forget. The spiritual symbolism when you see like a random animal or something. I always have this vision of this little baby roadrunner that I've seen running across that area, and it's like one of the very few. I've only seen a couple of roadrunners my whole life living in the Midwest. And I forget what they said exactly, what the spiritual symbolism is behind a roadrunner, but just adding that to the land of enchantment.
That and also Sandia that they mentioned in the video about Ray, as well as Albuquerque, is known for its alien and UFO area. Not to
Yep.
mention Roswell, but the
And
but
then White Sands Missile Range. We were out there hiking. That is a prime territory for, probably man and non-man-made crap.
they based the for Albuquerque. They based the show Resident Alien off of what people have discovered in Albuquerque
Hmm.
and White Sands and Sandia. So they based that show off of
I
that.
never have seen that. I'll have to watch an episode of that sometime.
Yeah, they based it off of people. That people believe they're actually alien, both they call them Lizzies and also Eben types that live in Albuquerque as regular humans disguised. And in Sandia, New Mexico, is where people, mainly channelers, get information from big-headed gray Eben aliens out of Sandia. So that's it's famous for that, not just Roswell.
It just goes to show you if you're into the paranormal, it's a perfect place to be.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Uh, Ray met 37-year-old Cindy Henney, who worked at a state park in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and who was fleeing convictions on grand theft and drug charges in Washington state. They became romantically involved and bonded over their shared violent sexual fantasies. In a 1993 recorded message, Ray told his captives that they would be forced to sexually service Hindi as well. Ray was divorced 4 times and had 2 children, including his accomplice daughter, Glenda Jessie Jean Ray. Glenda had tried to warn the FBI about her father's criminal activity in '86 after she discovered how sick he really was. But then she must have said, screw it, I'm going to get involved with it more. And so she told the FBI in '86, just think if they would have done something then. FBI agent Doug Belden recalled Jessie Ray's claims. She alleged that David Parker Ray was abducting and torturing women and selling them to buyers in Mexico. However, the allegations were too vague for the FBI to initiate an arrest. See, there was also then he was making snuff films and selling those, and selling bodies, like live human bodies, themselves, like into the sex trade or whatever. Down in Mexico, because the Mexican border is only 2 hours away from Truth or Consequences.
Mhm.
So his criminal history: Ray sexually tortured and presumably killed his victims using whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, leg spreader bars, surgical blades, electric shock machines, and saws. It is thought that he terrorized many women with these tools for many years with the help of accomplices, who are alleged to have included several of the women he was dating. Ray's torture room was a repurposed, soundproofed cargo trailer located immediately outside his Elephant Butte, New Mexico property. Ray stocked the trailer, which he called the toy box, with numerous sex toys, torture implements, syringes, and detailed diagrams showing ways of inflicting pain, as well as a homemade electrical generator to deliver electrical shocks to his victims. In total, Ray is believed to have spent $100,000 or more on the trailer, fitting it with sex toys and torture devices. Reportedly, Ray constructed elaborate contraptions to confine his victims, such as a fur-lined coffin and a makeshift pillory. In addition, there were also elaborate locks and pulleys to prevent his captives from escaping. A mirror was mounted on the ceiling above the table, which he strapped his victims to so that they would be able to see themselves and being raped and tortured. He has been said to have wanted his victims to see everything he was doing to them. Ray also put his victims in wooden contraptions that bent them over and immobilized them while he had his dogs and sometimes other friends rape them. He'd spread breeder scent on them and have the dogs rape them. Ray often had an audio tape recording of his voice played for his victims whenever they regained consciousness. In the transcripts of his tapes, which we listened to, he would fill them with barbiturates, inducing amnesia, and dump them off on the side of the road if he didn't kill them. This is one of his quotes, I believe. I get off on mind games. After we get completely through with you, you're going to be drugged up real heavy with a combination of sodium pentanol and pentobarbital. They are both hypnotic drugs that will make you extremely susceptible to hypnosis, auto-hypnosis, and hypnotic suggestion. You're going to be kept drugged a couple of days while I play with your mind. By the time I get through brainwashing you, you're not going to remember a fucking thing about this little adventure. That's how he exactly said it. I remember his actual recording. You're not going to remember a fucking thing about this little adventure. It's kind of how he more sounded like, not that muffled audio tape that we listened to earlier. He would kidnap about, we already looked at it there. 4 or 5 women in the air. Yeah, we read that. So the Albuquerque FBI in 2000 released hundreds of images of items that they were collected during the investigation. Ray, the FBI believes some of the items, which included jewelry and clothes, may have been taken from victims. The FBI, along with its law enforcement partners in New Mexico, is aggressively pursuing several leads in the search for remains of any possible victims of David Parker Ray. And Frank Fisher of the Albuquerque Field Office, we are asking family and friends of missing people to look over these photographs and contact us if they recognize any of these items. So there's a list of suspected victims. Billy Ray Bowers, 53, disappeared from Phoenix. The body of an unknown man wrapped in a blue tarp was found by a fisherman at Elephant Butte Lake. So where that's a suspected lake they was dumping bodies. He was identified in 1999. 22-year-old Jill Suzanne Troya was last seen at Frontier Restaurant in Albuquerque in September 30th, 1995. Glenda later told police that she left Troya at the Frontier Restaurant and left with her father Ray, and that she and David went to Elephant Butte Reservoir in southern New Mexico. Troya has never been heard from again. And there's a list. There's Sylvia Marie Parker. There's a homeless woman living on the shores of Elephant Butte Lake who was an acquaintance of Ray's via his daughter, and the police later discovered that Parker's boyfriend, that's who helped him, Dennis Yancey was his name, one of Ray's playmates. Parker disappeared on July 5th, 1997, when she was abducted and subjected to several days of torture before accomplice Yancey strangled her to death under orders by Ray. Yancey took police to where he disposed of the body with David Parker Ray and Jesse Ray, but the body had been moved. Yancey suspected, and the police support the theory that Ray came back to move the body later in case Yancey ever had a softening of his conscience and confessed. So, what in the world? I never heard this. At 10:30 a.m. on June 30th, 1999, Ralph Tudor, a 61-year-old El Paso resident, was fishing at Elephant Butte Lake. Caught on Tudor's fishing line was an 80-pound gunny sack filled with what he thought was animal flesh. The sack was split along its seam and then suspected it was human body parts and alerted the authorities. The gunny sack was determined to contain human flesh but no organs or bones. This meant that the unidentified victim was mutilated and dismembered before being dumped in the lake. Allegedly, Ray said that the thing to do is cut them down the belly, scoop out their guts, fill the chest cavity with cement weights, and then use baling wire to wrap them up. Furthermore, state police found bone fragments in Elephant Butte Lake belonging to a human leg in 2011. The DNA identified the victim as a female, but she was not linked to any reported missing women. So, like I said, during his arrest and investigation, it quite the trial, but he inevitably, was sentenced to prison. And yeah, Cindy Henney, an accomplice who testified against Ray, received a sentence of 36 years for a role in the crime. She was scheduled to receive parole in 2017. She was released in July 15, 2019 after serving 2 years of parole in prison.
Hmm.
And then that other guy, that Yancey's out of prison too. On May 28, 2002, Ray was taken to the Lee County Correctional Facility in Hobbs, New Mexico to be questioned by state police. He died of a heart attack before the interrogation took place. How? I mean, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Cynthia Vigil, along with Christine Barber, founded Street Safe New Mexico, a volunteer harm reduction nonprofit that works with sex workers and other vulnerable people living on the street. So I just want to share one more thing. That was basically the life of David Parker Ray, who got away with a lot of gruesome crimes. But the FBI part that I read there, where in the world do I need to go here? I'm gonna figure out my share screen. That little bit that the FBI talked about, you can go to the website and look at these, but look, there's 401 items in here, jewelry and stuff that was found in his toy box in the surrounding areas. And you never know, maybe a viewer here might be able to identify one of these pieces of jewelry from an aunt or a cousin or something that went missing, and just didn't connect the dots. You never know. It could be a viewer on our show that solves this. One of them.
Exactly.
Everybody's welcome to go to the FBI website and look at all this. A lot of jewelry. I mean, there's a lot. They took multiple pictures of each kind of jewelry, but I'd say there's at least 100 different items here that people can go through. If you know of anybody that might have went missing in that area in the 90s or 80s, I've looked at this. I always thought that was kind of an interesting piece of that half moon one.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, look like they'd be pretty identifiable if you knew the person.
Yeah, they're unique pieces. So yeah, if
But
somebody
yeah,
knows it's theirs or knows who it is, you can always either put it in the comments below or notify whoever that is too. So.
and Chris is going to get into his case with Manson here, but like we said in the beginning, look at the differences a little bit and the similarities both. It's both a two-way street, as we had one that hid in the shadows and got away with it all. One was in the spotlight while remaining in the shadows. And
Yeah,
we're going to get into that now.
one wanted to be seen and heard, and the other one wanted to operate in the shadows because he wanted to continue his sadistic behavior. So these are two distinct types of these
Of
types
sadists.
of sadists. Yeah, the other ones that are very, very, very public, like Charles Manson here. Let me see here. Okay, and I too had to look at Wikipedia.
How about that?
Because normally we would look at different sources. As Wikipedia, I will disclaimer this a little bit. Sometimes Wikipedia likes to skew from history a bit,
Yeah.
and they only want registered historians, like two registered, usually Smithsonian level
And
historians.
that's why I chose it for David. There's not a lot about David Parker Ray. For somebody, and I'll end it with that. For somebody that had possibly 60 victims and there was never one body found, he wasn't charged with one murder. That's unheard of. In my mind, I believe that he deserves the title of possibly most prolific serial killer in American history.
He may have been
He
worse than
just,
Manson. So
yeah, he hides in the shadows. That's why I find him so intriguing and interesting. Not to be gloating over him or anything. How could somebody get away with it? I know that was like a lot of, home video cameras, door ring bells and stuff like that. And DNA was just kind of getting to be a thing, but still, it's just like it's unfathomable to how somebody can live a double life that well. I guess let's just put it that way.
exactly.
And be comfortable with it.
And this one was not necessary. Manson was not necessarily a double life. His was like he advertised.
That's the way he was.
Exactly the way he was, So this one, yeah, okay. Let's see.
That's more like just his. Yeah, it's not like a split persona. It was just his persona.
And this guy, he was all out in the open versus Ray. So this is interesting. Charles Miles Manson. He was born November 12th, 1934. 34. and died November 19th, 2017. That's how long this guy was alive.
Yeah, he just had died. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the father of one of those victims said if he made it out of prison, he'd kill him himself. So it's
Mm.
the was always waiting to see if he would get on parole or was acquitted or what have you. And so I always found that interesting. Was an American criminal cult leader and musician who led the Manson family, a cult based in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Some cult members committed a series of at least 9 murders at 4 locations in July and August of 1969. In 1971, Manson was convicted of a first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of 7 people, including the film actress Sharon Tate, the most famous one of all of them. The prosecution contended that while Manson never directly ordered the murders, his ideology constituted an overt act of conspiracy. He was able to literally, some people believe he was able to mind control them into actually doing something they probably would not do, kind of like a Manchurian candidate sort of thing,
Hmm.
mixed with a bit of Stockholm syndrome in its own way. Before the murders, Manson had spent more than half of his life in correctional institutions. While gathering his cult following, he was a singer-songwriter on the fringe of the Los Angeles music industry. This should scream loud and clear that cultist type of thing in Hollywood. Chiefly through a chance association with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who introduced Manson to record producer Terry Melcher. In 1968, the Beach Boys recorded Manson's song Cease to Exist, renamed Never Learned Not to Love, as a single B-side, but Manson was uncredited. Gee, I wonder why. Afterward, he attempted to secure a record contract through Melcher, but was unsuccessful. People, this should tell you some of the origins of some of these types of things, especially these open, more overt killers like this. They are around this like satanic behavior. You hear the rumors of Hollywood, satanic Hollywood, they call it, with a lot of the underground, a lot of the child trafficking, a lot of the adrenochroming. You hear all the stories coming out of there. This should not surprise anybody that this guy was birthed in this particular area. So Manson could often talk about the Beatles, including their eponymous 1968 album, excuse me. According to Los Angeles County District Attorney Vincent Bugliosi, Manson felt guided by his interpretation of the Beatles' lyrics and adopted the term helter skelter to describe an impending apocalyptic race war. During his trial, Bugliosi argued that Manson had intended to start a race war, although Manson and others disputed this. Contemporary interviews and trial witnesses' testimony insisted that the Tate LeBlanc murders were copycat crimes intended to exonerate Manson's friend Bobby Bushnelli? Bushnelli. Okay. Manson himself denied having ordered any murders. Nonetheless, he served his time in prison and died from complications from colon cancer in 2017. That's actually interesting. People try to say, oh, he didn't actually do it, but he was able to influence those who did, therefore the conspiracy note or the conspiracy label on this. So, early life, childhood. Sorry, I have to lean in. My eyes are very fuzzy, so I have to lean in to read this a little bit. Charles Miles Maddox, his last name was originally Maddox, was born on November 12th, 1934, to 16-year-old Ada Kathleen Maddox of Ashland, Kentucky, in Cincinnati General Hospital, now the University of Cincinnati Academic Health Center, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Manson's Ohio birth certificate simply lists his name as Manson, quote unquote. His biological father appears to have been Colonel Walker Henderson Scott, Sr. of Catlettsburg, Kentucky, against whom Maddox filed a paternity suit that resulted in an agreed judgment in 1937. Scott worked intermediately in local mills and had a local reputation as a con artist. You see how sometimes it follows family lines too, and then just kind of explodes out of control after a while. He allowed Maddox to believe that he was an Army colonel, though colonel was merely his given name. When Maddox told Scott that she was pregnant, he informed her that he had been called away on Army business. After several months, she realized he had no intention of returning. Manson never knew his biological father. There was never really a way to nurture that crazy out of him. Usually if you have a loving environment, you can at least quell some of this. But so it's a whole battle between nature and nurture. But if you come in with more of a monstrous consciousness rather than a soul, this tends to complicate things. So in August 1934, before Manson's birth, Maddox married William Eugene Manson, 1909 to 1961, a laborer at a dry cleaning business. Maddox often went on drinking sprees with her brother, Luther Elbert Maddox, 1916 to 1950, leaving Charles with babysitters. Maddox and her husband divorced April 30th of 37 after William alleged gross neglect of duty by Maddox. Charles retained William's last name of Manson. On August 1st of 39, Kathleen and Luther were arrested for assault and robbery and sentenced to 5 to 10 years imprisonment, respectively. So I know this goes on a long time for a lot of his crimes, a lot of the cult activities here. Let's see if I can fast forward a bit here. Okay. 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 Here we are. Okay. Let's see. 1967 to 68. San Francisco in cult formation. A Parolian patient. Less than a month after his 1967 release, Manson moved to Berkeley from Los Angeles, which could have been a probation violation. Instead, after calling the San Francisco probation office upon his arrival, he was transferred to the Supervision of Criminology, Doctoral Research, and Federal Probation Officer Roger Smith. Until the spring of '68, Smith worked at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, which Manson and his family came to frequent. Roger Smith, as well as the HAFMC's founder, David Smith, received funding from the National Institutes of Health and reportedly to the CIA to study the effects of drugs like LSD, methamphetamine, and the counterculture movement in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. This is actually a very important point because, again, CIA was conducting experiments, social experiments at the time, and also, I believe, I can't completely substantiate this, but I know that by reputation, they would end up creating people such as Manson. This happened back when Jack the Ripper was in play back in the 1880s. There were people that firmly believed that he was actually created in the same way with certain techniques, like from basically mind-ripping drugs to hypnotic techniques from back then in the 1880s. So I firmly believe that the CIA is pumping these creatures out to do harm across the landscape. So the patients at the HAFMC became subject to their research, including Manson and his expanding group of mostly female followers who came to see Roger Smith regularly. And I'll go on a little bit further here. Manson received permission from Roger Smith to move from Berkeley to the Haight-Ashbury district. He first took LSD and would use frequently during his time there. David Smith, who had studied the effects of LSD and amphetamines in rodents, wrote the change in Manson's personality during this time was most abrupt Roger Smith had observed in his entire professional career. Manson also read the book Stranger in a Land. Oh, actually, hang on. Stranger in a Strange Land, excuse me. A science fiction novel by Robert Heinlein, inspired by the burgeoning of free love philosophy in Haight-Ashbury during the Summer of Love. Manson began preaching his own philosophy based on a mixture of Strange or in a Strange Land, the Bible, Scientology, Dale Carnegie, and the Beatles, which quickly earned him a following. He may also have borrowed some of his philosophy from the process Church of the Final Judgment, whose members believed Satan would become reconciled to Jesus, and they would come together at the end of the world to judge humanity. You see how this sometimes the three-letter agencies will spawn things such as this. This can link right back into their backyard, folks. And I'll go into one more point. I don't want to get too long-winded here. I will put a link to this in the descriptor. If you guys want to go and read this entire thing, it is quite long-winded. So for Wikipedia, it's quite long-winded, actually. Involvement with Scientology, and I will point this out. Manson began studying Scientology while incarcerated with the help of fellow inmate Lanier Rainier, and in July of 1961 listed Scientology as his religion. A September 1961 prison report argues that Manson appears to have developed a certain amount of insight into his problems through the study of this discipline. Another prison report in August 1966 stated that Manson was no longer an advocate of Scientology upon his release in '67. Manson traveled to Los Angeles, where he reportedly met local Scientologists and attended several parties for movie stars. Manson completed 150 hours of auditing. His right-hand man, Bruce Davis, worked at the Church of Scientology headquarters in London from November 1968 to 1969. They would say right-hand man. That sounds like handler to me. So the three-letter agencies will always have handlers, folks, but they will always have handlers. So I'll go into one thing about Sharon Tate here, and then I think we are good here.
Talk about mind control. Sharon Tate's all about it.
Oh, yeah. Sharon Marie Tate Polanski, January 24th, 1943 to August 9th of 69, was an American actress and model. During the 1960s, she appeared in advertisements and small television roles before appearing in films, as well as working as a model. After receiving positive reviews for her comedic and dramatic acting performances, Tate was hailed as one of Hollywood's most promising newcomers, being compared favorably to the late Marilyn Monroe. Okay, let me see here. Sorry, I have a hard time seeing this. She made her film debut in '61 as an extra in Barbados and with Anthony Quinn. She next appeared in the British mystery horror film Eye of the Devil in '66 and co-starred in the '67 film Don't Make Waves. Very prophetic as these titles that are popping up, actually. Her first major role was as Jennifer North in the 1967 American drama film Valley of the Dolls, which earned her a Golden Globe Award nomination. The role would help her become a rising sex symbol of Hollywood, appearing in a Playboy photo shoot by filmmaker Roman Polanski, her future husband. That year, she also performed in the comedic horror film Fearless Vampire Killers, directed by Roman Polanski. See Polanski's name coming up more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Tate her last completed film, 12+1, was released posthumously in 1969. The Polanski, he's got a reputation of his own for, let's just say, a lot of criminal activity. Let's just put it that way. On August 9th of '69, Tate and 4 others were murdered by members of the Manson family cult in the home she shared with Polanski. While she was away, she was 8.5 months pregnant. Now, there is something I wish to point out in the home she shared with Polanski. A lot of Hollywood, they nickname it Satanic Hollywood for a reason. What do these cults do? They sacrifice people. They sometimes will pick it randomly. Sometimes they won't. They usually do it to women for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And
I always go back to that Black Delilah murder.
Yep. Yeah, and that's also out that way too. So think of it this way. Her name came up as the sacrifice to Satan in these cults.
Hmm.
Believe by pacifying the devil, they're not only going to gain his favor, they're going to actually have a better life as a result. And this is true of all Kabbalists everywhere. They like to do things to people because they think they will then stay in favor with the satanic hierarchy or whatever of the satanic gods they worship, from Baphomet to Mithras to any of them. This is a common thread. There was even a scene in Stargate Atlantis where they added something like that, and where a community was sacrificing people on an island to the wraith aliens that were in it, that were basically cannibals, and they would steal their energy and eat them essentially. That's essentially like the whole reptilian agenda here the government's involved in, and the satanic agenda there. But this goes right along in line with basically sacrifices in the satanic religion. Mostly, I shouldn't say just satanic, because there are some that use the label that are not involved in any of this. It's more Luciferian. I want to distinct. It's Luciferian. I don't want any of the pagan religions actually mad at me over that one. I do know the distinction between them. So just the common word is satanic, and Satanism. So if you guys want to actually distinct yourself from the shitheads in Hollywood, just change your name, please. So just change the name of that particular faction. So there is no blurring lines there. But the point I do want to get at is somebody like Manson, with his upbringing, and also Ray with his upbringing. I see people like this as either having a dimmed soul light where it's more shaded over, or they have a more of a demonic consciousness that has been placed in them. These cults, through rituals, know how to transplant consciousness. They know how to shift the kind of soul waters out and put another consciousness in. Some of the SSP factions do it through technology. They've learned from aliens. Other ones do it through pure ritual and magic. And they're both equal kind of sick contenders out there. But any SSPers out there and secret space programmers out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. But with this, they're through a ritual. They showed it in the end of the defunct movie Conan the Barbarian with Jason Momoa. Yeah, that defunct one from I believe it's 2000. I want to say 2012 when that came out. People want to correct me on that one. But when that came out, the ending was where the one character was trying to sacrifice a female character, trying to bring back her dead mother by transplanting the soul into the body. They said, okay, your soul is like water, your body is a vessel. We can just empty it and put a new one in there. Mm-hmm. That is very, 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 very accurate to this. Now, if you were to say, let a body go without a soul in it, let's just go this route. The automatic would become almost like feral, would be like just a sadistic, the type of person like Ray or like Manson. Now, add in there like what we said about Starkweather back when we did the Starkweather mystery. What was said then about a consciousness versus a soul. You have to have a consciousness of some sort driving the flesh form, or it would be even worse. Like essentially something else taking the wheel, essentially. Of the body. Now, again, can't prove any of these things. I just know the reputation of some of these magical groups. These are the goals they are trying to accomplish. They're trying to put their own people out there. There's even some ritualistic ones that do it at birth. We call these people inborns, where the body is, or the fetus is screwed with pre-birth. And that person comes in with an over narcissistic tendency and will 9 times out of 10 become somebody like Starkweather, Ray, or Manson. So this is what these ritualistic cults do in the modern age, with both technology at their disposal and also with magic. They've combined curse magic and ritualistic magic with artificial intelligence and algorithms. So it's now also, they said he was in Scientology. That's also a very important point, because of the fact that they some of the good portions of it will focus on like shadow work and doing things of that nature. Then there's also some negative aliens involved, and there's also some other conjuring rituals involved in the negative aspects, in the negative militant arm of Scientology. And I may end up having to make this a Rumble episode because of the fact I just said that this said the damned S word in there. But seeing as Wikipedia has it on their listing already, I will take a chance on this one. But
That's what I figured.
yeah,
It's all out there.
it's all out there.
Who
So
cares? There's like nothing that people even heard before anyhow.
exactly.
I'm not going to be able to sleep at night.
We had our GIC site targeted by the Church of Scientology for mentioning them on
Nah, go figure.
yeah. So this should tell you something, folks. Granted, I've heard some good things, but I've heard mostly bad. So and with their alien lord, they have an alien lord kind of like Lucifer called Xanos, and so that's another one of those names that like you have Mithras, Lucifer, Baphomet, all of those. So that's what's just one of the pantheon of the negative gods that are essentially out there, and demon lords, the archdemons, whatever the hell you want to call them. So with that though, this is what I believe happened with the CIA involvement. You have people that are MK Ultra to also become this. It's chemical inducement as well, like you saw with the LSD. You have that it's being misused. You have psychedelics now that are being used for very, very good things right now, and people out there are advocating to use them to help people, but they have also been used to harm. You have the CIA doing all this MK Ultra crap from the 30s on. Then you also have the more modern day stuff that was discovered if the mixed with the remote viewing programs. If people watch the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Hey, that's a good one.
It's like a weird movie, but it is about essentially using psychic powers to kill a goat, essentially. But it's also about how people were hypnotized using MK Ultra style torturing and using psychedelics by groups like the CIA. So this is where I believe some of these psychotic killers come from, mixed with the rituals, mixed with the chemicals, mixed with technology. And they would use music repeatedly over and over again, playing the Barney theme song over and over again to torture people. That was only lightly touched on the news. Gee, I wonder why. And this was something that's actually provable. That portion of it's actually a provable historical event right there. I believe all of this is interconnected. And one point I will make is what's really odd. This was about maybe 2 years ago. I had a dream about Charles Starkweather, and I believe this is what ended up ultimately connecting us to do the Charles Starkweather mystery part 1 and 2 that we did. So where I saw these government people standing around him when he was getting the chair, and they were basically measuring what was happening to him as he was dying, and like doing something with his brain or something like that. And they kept his brain afterwards. I saw this in this dream state, and where I saw these government workers had a hand in almost creating somebody like him. And that's where I kind of got the idea of looking into that kind of concept further. And it ended up being provable in some cases. Not for Starkweather or Manson, but you just follow the clues, you follow the breadcrumbs. And people can make up their own mind in that area. But is it a nature nurture kind of situation where it's either by somebody's nature, family history, lineage curses, or is it nurtured in? Also, that would fall under government CIA influencing. That would be a form of negative nurturing. So, did his genetics already have it to begin with? Is that why they chose him for it? For the secret space program, that sure is the case. For some alien abductions, that's sure the case. For government agencies, military abductions, that's sure the case. So they know there's an important thing in the genetic memory. People have certain psionic abilities and certain things that they want to exploit. Manson was said to actually be able to make a clock stop with his mind. Some people think that that's propaganda and thinking he's just being a narcissist in that case. But there are actual prison guards that witness that's where he'd stare at a clock and stop it. that psionic telekinetic ability if he had that ability. And I can see why they would have chosen him to mentally influence people. And he could have used it. Think of using somebody like in Star Wars, the Force, on the dark side kind of thing, where somebody could easily influence. Like you see Obi-Wan Kenobi in it going, oh, you need to choose a better life. And he saw this criminal walk away from this bar. Oh, yes, I'll do something more of my life kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about for negative, where they're influenced to become that. Like the character of Darth Vader. What happened in the Star Wars lore? The character of Palpatine manipulated him by series of false flag after false flag. They were showing how the CIA commits false flag operations in that by creating false wars, like they did with the droids. Gave them the excuse to create the stormtroopers that then the Emperor Palpatine or Palpatine then controlled their Chancellor Palpatine controlled them through General Order 66 in that. So you see, that's where they put the mind control in there. I know I brought a sci-fi spin to it, but they put these points in those disclosures. I won't go too much into the sci-fi aspect, but that's how you see if you watch the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, you're going to see how false flags are created by organizations like the CIA. You're going to see how people are mentally manipulated into and goaded or gaslit into things, and eventually their mind is warped through also energy influence, like the Force. I believe Manson had at least some latent psionic ability that got the government's attention to begin with. And they wanted him negative, like how Darth Vader was hunting the Force-sensitive children in the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, looking for those that would serve the dark side or kill them if they wouldn't. So this follows along those kinds of lines. People think it's allegorical. I think it's more direct and literal in the philosophical, kind of respect or that teaching respect. So, or influence respect. So Aubrey, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this before we go to the.
Well, the only thing I will add after talking about Charles, it just goes to show what type of a man he was, how he could mind control people, to control his people to go after Sharon Tate and just all the things that he tried to organize and put together. It's extremely weird how he could do that being that well known.
Mm-hmm.
And
Getting the power from his fans to have the influence to people co-creating that.
That's the thing. That's the control that he had on people. It was kind of similar to the remote viewing. It was like a remote viewing sort of mass hysteria control that he had on people.
Mm-hmm.
That or he created that fear amongst people.
Exactly. And you get people afraid, then they're more susceptible to that level of influence. And people with psionic abilities, yes, people call this witchcraft, but you can do like they show in Star Wars with the Force. You can actually, for people that have not really completely activated that ability yet, people call them normies, but that's more of a slur. That's quickly becoming like a racial slur. But whereas somebody that has built up that muscle can influence somebody that has not, like you see in Star Wars, and that's the whole idea of the Force being using to be control, like a control mechanism. So it's the same thing. It's an influence and an energetic frequency influence, and Lucas had that correct. So in my opinion, I've seen a lot of comparisons there. So. I also, before I get into channel, I know Aubrey, you wanted to. We were talking off recording about how you wanted to do a little spin-off show for a conspiracy sect here.
Yeah, I need to try to this summer. I'm going to try to put together a little offshoot show called Conspiracy Sector Secret Archives, to where I'll dive into, a little bit of history, a little bit of current times, a little bit of what's ever popping through, just to keep everybody aware and everybody on their toes, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there's some things him and I always can't do together because we're clear across the country from one another. So it's like, look for that, folks. There is a conspiracy sector group on Facebook.
And we'll be a little bit more active. I've been pretty lax about that lately, but just trying to get all my ducks in a row. But we'll have some interesting things coming your way.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And if you want to see a particular topic, let us know in the comments below.
Yep. If there's anything that we haven't talked about yet and you'd like us to dive into detail about it and talk about whatever, go ahead and comment that, and we'll do a future episode on it.
Most definitely, yes. Sorry, I had to turn around and get my crystal off the shelf over there. But if people are wondering why you see me leaning close all the time, I've had some eye issues pop up from different targetings that's popped up recently. This is why you see me do this and look real close at things. So why I know the glasses are distracting. People have told me that, but when I'm looking at reading stuff on screen or doing Q&As and stuff like that, I have to do it. So to be able to see. So okay, at this point in time, who is going to do the channel? I know open the circle through the house. Okay. Let's see. Is it Isaac? Of course, it probably would be, but let's see if anybody else wants to give a voice here. Okay, Isaac. Okay, of course. Let's see. This situated. And people wondering what I'm fiddling with down here. It's a shungite piece and crystal down here. So, and 2 silver coins. So, yeah. So, people always wonder what I'm fiddling with on the shelf or on the desk here. So, okay. Yes, it is Isaac. This is a pertinent topic, especially now. There are also, I do wish to point out to start with, many channelers and many psychics, psionically based people right now that are attempting to solve a lot of these crimes and so with their abilities. But I must caution people. There is a lot of illusionary glamour magic is what is called out there, as well as a lot of timeline shifting. So, like, say if somebody wanted to solve a cold case, and you say you get a dozen different psychics, all in, say, isolated rooms, even in other parts of the country, which is usually the best usage, all blind tests. There will be maybe 2 of them that come up with the exact same thing, and the rest will come up with different variations of what they are seeing. And they're not all wrong. They could be different facets of different timelines or temporal events that maybe the oversoul of the victim is involved in, or which is actually more likely than not, glamour magic, which is illusionary magic, which was what was just mentioned. You have the magical aspect mixed with the technological, which is also voice to skull, which then affects what is understood and remembered and seen, which bounces through your technology. You have a blending of both worlds in this. People like Manson and Starkweather and people like Ray, you have these 2 different types. The one that was in the shadows doing his thing, and he was the prominent figure. Essentially, nobody would of his standing could possibly do this, or we know him quite well. Did you? Because you were all shocked by the fact that he was arrested at all for these crimes. And yes, he did murder quite a few people before they found him, but the fact that they couldn't prove that, some of these murderers will not they get off on keeping the secret. Other ones, like Manson, get off by bragging. And also people like Starkweather. The thing of it is, though, Starkweather, he actually killed a lot more than they talked about, as Elena said in the channel in that episode. But the 2 distinct types, though, are the public figure. That's where they get the narcissism from. They rise to the top in some either fashion, like a politician or like a prominent public figure. Even in a small town, it doesn't matter what power position they're in a power position. Manson, on the other end of the spectrum, where he just created a cult from the bottom up, but then rose out of the ashes like a phoenix and was a public, prominent figure, but in a different way. This is a distinction there where some of them they become a narcissistic type person because they're the underdog that rose to power. Like Hitler. What was he before that? He was an artist. He was also a soldier in World War One, and then eventually rose to prominence to what everybody knows him to be, one of the most evil, disgusting people on the planet. So, this is exactly how these people rise up. They get influence from somewhere. They always blame the Hitler one on the Spear of Destiny, which wasn't an actual thing. That was more ET influence. That was more of a Kabbalist family, again, influence to create an opponent by which then the world had to stop at nothing to stop. This was created. This was also ET influence, as I said. With those same techniques, you have Manson and you have somebody like Ray. But in that instance, ironically said, because he was talking about Star Wars and it's the Ray character, it's a joke. But in this, that particular guy, was he influenced from a demonic source to become this? I actually have to say yes to this because it slowly bonded and melded with him, bringing with it creepy sexual deviant tendencies. Not bashing anybody that's just into the bondage portion of it. There is a line, though. There is a line that once crossed cannot be uncrossed. The only way you could do it is by erasing memories, and this was also what was said as well with Ray, where he was able to erase memories with chemicals. The CIA uses this on a regular and constant basis to conduct their operations. This is a very important point. Erasing someone's memory is an agency staple. They will do this with technology through paralysis, like in fake alien abduction cases, with a chemical. ETs will use more psionics and frequency to bypass the memories over to another frequency and resuppress them, so the brain can't access them in like maybe like kind of like a balloon. Or that has a cork in it, you would say. The SSPers go into this because they're transferred into a different body, put into a different temporal space, and then their brain encodes and decodes differently as they're running a parallel life with another version of themselves. That's more complicated in a simple aspect, though. Very simple. Chemical inducement along with demonic intrusion. You want to keep it simple aside from all the sci-fi-esque aspects. It begins with creepy thoughts, influences, demonic intrusion, and also the acceptance over time and the manicuring over time of what is now the acceptable behavior. You can become used to anything, even that type of behavior, even the agreement that maybe your consciousness is more like one of those entities. Think of like the character of Freddy Krueger. What happens there? Dream demon fuses with human deviant. Think along those lines. The Wes Craven and the rest of them did not have it wrong in that area. Yes, there are Dreamtime invasions. It's very bad right now. But aside from any of those things, chemical inducement, along with key trigger words that are used kind of like a sleeper agent, and the slow gravitation over from one idea to the next. Though Ray, in the beginning, it started at 16, they could have gotten him as a child and did this like they do for the secret space program. I estimate that Ray got hit somewhere around the age of 6 or 7 with this. This is usually what happens. Even I do not see everything, even though I do channel this way and have higher psionic capabilities. I'm not omnipotent. Somebody tried to get me to say impotent, but in this case, I will digress. I can go into questions if you like.
Well, it's funny that you just had your last statement because I think that was the most perfect channeling, and I don't think I have any questions. You literally covered everything I was going to ask.
See, there is a good aspect to reading minds, you see. So,
I would say I'm dumbfounded because the questions I was going to ask, you already covered it.
Yes, because psionics don't just involve words. They involve thought and they involve intention, you see. And that can be seen before that of the words spoken. So, as the answering of the questions is essentially you have asked them, but also back to that whole impotence comment, they can This was more of a Freudian slip on his part in the channeling process, but essentially poking at me. But in this aspect, they can influence sexual deviancy to the point where somebody cannot completely get off unless it's something more over bloated because they've affected the mind in that area, causing an impotent state. You see. So this is
And you're
exactly.
kind of you're picking up. There was another killer I wanted to talk about, and it was the son of Sam. And he's proclaimed to be, as many killers do, a changed Christian. He's found God, but he claimed that it was the demons and the devil that was making him do his crimes. And, I try to get in the mind of a killer when I listen to their interviews, but I guess the one question that I could ask, you kind of summed it up a little bit, but people like him and others, do you believe that the devil himself could be influencing some people to commit these crimes?
You could say this, even though there's a lot of beings that fall under that category: Draco reptilians, different gray types, different dimensional beings, different even ghosts that have mutated into demon forms. And is there a Lucifer? Yeah, actually there is. There isn't the hell that you go to when you die, but it goes back to your Enki and Enlil mythology, and he was the one that created the religions by which then people were controlled. He went into another name, Loki, and he went to another name, Lucifer. So, or the light bearer. So with this, or the fallen one of God kind of thing. So yes, you could honestly say, by the by, the devil made them do it.
Very good information. Thank you for that.
Yes. Anything else?
That's pretty much it. You dumbfounded me with the question. It's very good reading.
All right. Well, thank you. This is always enjoyable. Goodbye now.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, that was actually quite fascinating. He was showing me images of how some of these people were programmed from a distance. They like to call this the Mr. Smith effect now, or Agent Smith effect, where consciousness drops into people. The Matrix made it famous. That's why they say Mr. Smith or Agent Smith effect. But it's V2King. It's a mix between chemical inducement, V2King, just like they have chemical inducement in the food now, like we were talking about in the previous episode, and they have psionic dampening. Like I said, when they introduced it in that SpongeBob episode I told people about in previous episodes. So this is how this kind of manipulation is done. That's why you're seeing so many of these incidents, like with school shootings and all these other things, where you're seeing they are actually literally influenced somewhere else and then put on the world stage. And people like to say, oh, then that means they're not responsible for their behavior. That's a yes and a no, because you can fight this, like the Winter Soldier type of mentality. You can actually fight it and free yourself of it with proper energetic and meditative techniques. If you know something is wrong that you're doing, don't do it. I know I'm oversimplifying, but at the same time, it always boils down to good and evil. So, or the fight within thereof. So, this is where I'm at with this. I'm going to close this. There we go. I wanted to make sure that I always do this, because with energetic techniques, there is a protocol. You have to open and close, and to avoid the mental influences thereof. So, Aubrey, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this before we take it out.
I'll just close out by saying, give us your viewpoints on these people, on Charles Manson and David Parker Ray. What do you think about their crimes? What's your belief on why they got away with it so long, how they got away with it? And also let us know, like we said before, what you're interested in hearing about next. But we hope you've been doing good, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Yes, and you are now exiting the conspiracy sector. So, bye-bye, everybody.
Adios.
Also, I was going to say the whole premise behind that conversation was they're trying to get rid of somebody's heart space. Like I saw, I'm being told I can't mention that one anymore. Okay. Hang on. It was briefly where somebody was captured by the Martian Germans, and they were made to look over a dying alien, and they were supposed to just conduct business without feeling sorry. He felt sorry, and that means he failed the test. It was just like you saw Clifford Stone all the time. You know, he cried over all the time because he felt bad over these dying beings. He had a heart space. If somebody could do that, then yeah, they have a heart. I mean, you have to be stoic in times like that, but not all the time. But at any rate, trying to get rid of the heart space by slowly turning somebody into somebody like them. Also, they look for people with those tendencies, like the Starkweathers, the Dexters, those that have a narcissistic gene, essentially. What I didn't mention is in the show CSI years ago, they did a merging of Charles Starkweather and Charles Manson. They created a character named Haskell, and this is when Lawrence Fishburne was the main character scientist, or the head of the program on CSI. And they had something called the warrior gene. And what they meant by that was Lawrence Fishburne's character had it, and Haskell had it. You could go your whole life without becoming something like Haskell. It also delved into the nature-nurture tendency. Lawrence Fishburne's character was actually nurtured good. Haskell was allowed to be feral. So I'm going to look up the character real fast. Okay. Lawrence Fishburne's character on CSI was Raymond Langston, and he was. The series went on from year 2000 to 2015. Not LA, not NCIS, but CSI, and not New York or Miami. It's the original. When character Grissom was away. I'll look that up too. Give me a second. It was William Peterson played Grissom. I think the character was supposed to be related to Gil Grissom of the Apollo mission. So, and I feel that's true. That they were supposed to. Oh yeah, Virgil Grissom. I was thinking Virgil, or Gil, and Gil Grissom was the name of the character. So I think they were supposed to be related. Virgil was the astronaut. You see him in the credits for Star Trek Enterprise when they're showing the astronauts. And I found that interesting. Okay, let's see. Man, am I getting interfered with? Holy crap. Okay. Let's see. Wow. Now, okay, there we are. The movie I wanted to mention, you see, get fucked with too. The movie I wanted to mention was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was about Manson murders, but Quentin Tarantino took it off canon, or took it off historical canon by quite a bit. I guess that was just a way to honor, the people that died, or just to fuck around, one of those two. And, they had everybody live in the end. And then the funniest part is when the Nazis get hit with a flamethrower during that. They were filming a movie that had Nazis in them. That was funny. But the movie was a one-timer for me. Tarantino is an acquired taste. He does some good stuff like Pulp Fiction, and then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood didn't really make a lot of sense to do that at the end. So, taking away from historical canon, or diverting from historical canon. But at any rate, it was okay. So I will leave this here. Alright. It is 4:04 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, April 24th, 2025. Thank you. Okay, what my mind was blocking was, as the theme song for Enterprise was, Where Will the Heart Take Me? That is exactly what is being blocked. That was being blocked from my mind. You see what happens? So it's 4:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, April 24th, 2025. Thank you. Okay, this is relevant to the Charles Manson conversation. This book here, Weird Seeds Inside the Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Art of the Hippie Dream by David McGowan. I'm not going to read the entire back, but you can see whose name is there. So this is actually quite interesting because of the fact that that's, I believe, one of the places Manson was programmed, like what I was saying before by the three-letter agencies in this conspiracy sector episode. This is where also all the for and against began with the cabal. Jim Morrison's father starting the Vietnam War with the Bay of Tompkins incident, and Jim Morrison being anti-war, his father pro-war. For and against conspiracy. You see how that goes. So it is 12:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. Thank you. Okay, here's a synchronicity if I ever saw it. This goes with the George synchronicity with the Lanya Losing material. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I may reveal it, may not, but it has to do with an alternate identity mine named George during the SSP. So, but Jim Morrison's father is named George Stephen Morrison. Stephen with a PH. Stephen. Just like my middle name. Exact same like my father's middle name. And also the E.T. that you heard in that episode with Audrey Walters. Spelled the same way for his pseudonym. So, it's George Stephen Morrison. Born January 7th, 1919. Died November 17th, 2008. Was the United States Navy Rear Admiral, upper half, and naval aviator. Morrison held significant commands of United States naval forces during the Vietnam War. He was the father of Jim Morrison and lead singer of The Doors. He's the one that started the whole Bay of Tompkins. They're coming right for us. No Viet Cong were that powerful to take on the U.S. Navy. No. That's a load of crap, false flag to get us involved over there. MJ-12 was being funded by the resources being found over there. That was only one explanation. There's a lot of others. It's usually our resources. But also, this coincides with what Joanna saw in a dream about her and I in naval uniforms. I feel this falls under this particular synchronicity. This one's blaring and staring me in the face. He seems very familiar to me. But same with the Laurel Canyon. I keep seeing, like an altar of us around there in the SSP. Not planning things out per se, but just watching and observing, me and Joanna. So it's like we were undercover watching. I'm thinking this is where the whole naval, she saw us in tan naval uniforms and I was debriefing her. I think this is related to this. I feel 110% it's related to this and the Lanya Losing material with the George synchronicity. I think it's, where I spent a long period of time there. That's really all I can say on that. So, I'm going to end this here before I get in trouble here. So it is, because you say too much on something, certain things don't happen. So, good things, rather. Loose lips sink ships. That's a naval term. So, and also keep mum chum. That's an old World War II term as well. So, just know it's positive. So, one of the things here is positive. So, it is 12:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. Thank you.